Now come the days of the king.
So how can you be the king of your life? In this video, we'll be discussing how you can integrate the 4 archetypes of the mature masculine so that you can become who you are capable of being by expressing these different masculine energies in their optimal amounts so that they are functioning in harmony and that you are being the king of your life. Right? So let's just dive into what an archetype is in the first place. So this was a concept developed by Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, and he says, and I quote, "A universal model for behavior that exists in the collective unconscious is what we refer to as an archetype." Okay, now what's a collective unconscious? Again, I'll quote, "It is the instinctual patterns that exist in the structures of the unconscious mind that are passed down over the generation." So what Jung did, he was studying all of these mythologies from ancient cultures, these ancient cultures that did not have interactions with each other, yet they had common archetypes, they had common concepts, common characters that were coming up again and again in their stories, and these were what he labeled the archetypes. Furthermore, he was working with clients in his clinic as well, right? And these clients were dealing with certain situations in their lives, and a lot of the work that he did was actually in like dream interpretation, and in these dreams these clients were also seeing projections of these different archetypes. Now I'm telling you this because a lot of scientific people criticize the idea of the collective unconscious because it's not exactly provable through an experiment or anything like that. But when we look at all the stories, rather of popular culture right now or the ancient cultural texts, we have these certain universal models of behavior that show up again and again and again, right? And in this video in particular, I'll be referring to the 4 archetypes, like I said, of the mature masculine. This was written about in a book by Robert Moore, who was a Jungian psychologist, and he called them the king, the warrior, the lover, and the magician. Now, there are 4 aspects to who you are right now as well, right? And each of these 4 aspects are narrowed down by each of these 4 different archetypes. And we have to bring them in harmony so that we're not too much on either end, whereby it becomes the bipolar shadow, as Robert Moore refers to it. And when they are in harmony, then we become the kings of our life, okay? So, like I said, I refer to the quadrated psyche, right? Thinking, doing, feeling, and being. So the thinking aspect refers to the magician. The doing aspect refers to the warrior. The feeling aspect refers to the lover. And when these 3 aspects are in harmony, that is when we become the king, which integrates each 3 of these archetypes in perfect integration. Okay, so let's start with discussing the magician. Now, in popular culture, we can see the magician as Yoda in Star Wars. We can see him as Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. We can see him as Morpheus in The Matrix. Okay, now the magician is the archetype of thoughtfulness and reflection. And I quote from the book, King, Warrior, Lover, Magician. Robert Moore writes that the magician energy is the archetype of awareness and of insight primarily, but also of knowledge of anything that is not immediately apparent or commonsensical, right? In The Matrix, Morpheus comes up, he pulls Neo out. He's like, "Yo, do you take the red pill or the blue pill? The red pill, I'm going to show you how deep the rabbit hole goes right now." And Neo, in that process, he already knows there's something that is beyond what meets the eyes. He's not exactly clear on it, but Morpheus is the magician who gives him that knowledge. Now, like I was saying, when these archetypes are expressed too much or too little, then we have what Robert Moore calls the bipolar shadow. So when the magician aspect is too active, when these energies are too active without integrating the rest of these energies, then we have the manipulator, right? The manipulator maneuvers people by keeping information they may need. He thinks too much and he stands back from life and never really lives it. This is something that a lot of us tend to go through, whereby we are consuming all of this information. At least in the beginning of my own personal development journey, I was reading all of this information. I was like compiling it. I remember I read the 48 Laws of Power. I'm like, yo, I can't tell anyone about this book after you use this information and get my away from everyone that I interact with, right? But that is too much thinking. That's too much analysis. And when you're capturing all of this information and have it within your mind, but you're not actually doing anything with it, you're not sharing it with people who could actually benefit, then you are expressing too much of the magician energy, whereby you are becoming the manipulator, right? On the other side of the spectrum, we have the innocent one. And this bipolar shadow is when there is not enough of that magician energy going in. He says that, Robert Moore says that the innocent one wants the power, but not the responsibility, right? The innocent one learns just enough to derail those who are making progress in their lives. Now, maybe you have found yourself in this aspect as well, whereby you are not doing anything yourself, and thereby you are learning enough information to throw someone else off track. And this is really just an own insecurity. This is when you are not tapping into your own analytical skills, when you are not tapping into your own life force energy to go something and do something with your own life. And therefore you have this information that you are using to derail other people who are actually moving forward. So it's not like all of these archetypes are going to be in perfect harmony the whole time. We will be oscillating between them. The point is to catch ourselves anytime we find ourselves in too much of the spectrum, so that we can bring it back to the balance, to the middle ground, to the golden mean, and then tap into our king energy more and more. All right. So like I said, it comes down to the integration, and this is the magician, and we want to make sure that we are accessing it in balance in the golden mean, whereby we are consuming that information, we're actually implementing it as well, rather than just consuming too much or consuming just enough to derail others, right? We have to keep our intentions straight and clear. The next archetype of the mature masculine is the warrior archetype, okay? This was represented by William Wallace in Braveheart, by Maximus in Gladiator, and this is the archetype of decisiveness and proper aggressiveness. Now, to quote Robert Moore from the book, if we are accessing the warrior appropriately, we will fight good fights in order to make the world a better and more fulfilling place for everyone and everything. Our war making will be for the creation of the new, the just, and the free. Right? So that is when we are accessing the warrior archetype in its golden mean in the right amount. Because when we go too much, then we become the sadist, right? Who has a passion for destruction and cruelty without knowing what he really wants. He doesn't know what he really wants, and therefore he just attacks everything in his path. Now, I can definitely attest to this. When I first started building my online business, I started generating income. I was just going ham. I'm like, I need more revenue. I just need to keep going right now. I need to keep taking massive action no matter what stimulants I take. I did all of that, just taking massive action without even getting clear on why I was doing this in the first place. Because I had more money in the bank account than I was actually doing anything with. It was just lying there. It was rotting away. Money needs to flow. It can't just lie there. And although I had all of this there, I was still going through the motions of trying to get more and more and more, this insatiable appetite for more, right? Because I was not clear on why I was actually doing what I was doing. And the reality is that I was doing it because subconsciously I didn't feel like I was worthy, and therefore I thought I needed even more money to feel like I am enough. But once that's unconscious and that unconscious becomes conscious, then we can shine the light of our awareness and direct that energy towards something else, right? Now, when there is not enough of the warrior energy going through, then we have the masochist, right? The masochist is cowardly, he's lacking vigor, he's depressed, and he is unable to get anything done at all. So again, just keep your awareness high so that you know where you are on the frequency of this archetype, right? Are you too much? Are you too little? Are you somewhere in between? And the point is to always catch yourself and realize that when you're not doing enough, then you are not accessing that warrior energy. Pump yourself up, get motivated, and do the thing that needs to be done. Access the energy so that you can go ahead and move towards where you want to go, right? And it comes down to the harmonization of all of these energies. Because the next one, we have the lover archetype. Okay, this is represented in mythology by Eros, who was the god of love in Greek mythology. We have Shiva, who's the creator and destroyer in Hindu philosophy, right? And I'll just quote from the book directly right now. And Robert Moore says that for ancient peoples, blood was the carrier of spirit, energy, and the soul. And when blood stood the penis erect, it was incarnating spirit into flesh. The life force, always divine, was entering the profane world of matter and of human life. The result of this union of the human and the divine, of the world and God, was always creative and energizing. From this union, new life and new forms, new combinations of opportunities and possibilities were born, right? So the lover is the archetype of vividness, aliveness, and sensuality. And when we are appropriately accessing the lover, but keeping our ego structure strong, we feel connected, enthusiastic, compassionate, and romantic about our lives. It is the lover that gives us a sense of meaning, what we have been calling spirituality. End quote. Right? So again, this is something that really, the feeling aspect of ourselves is not something that we tap into very often. But when you can use your feelings to really direct them towards what you are here for, like your feelings are really a signal to let you know whether you are moving on the right path or the wrong path. So many times we are blind, we're distracted from how we feel in the moment with like whatever it is that you distract yourself with, right? And when we lose sight of how we feel right now, then we're losing sight of what is actually important to us, because our emotions are signals for us to direct whether we're actually doing the work that we're here to do or whether we are off the beaten path, right? So again, you can express too much of the lover energy as well. When you have too much of this, then you become the addicted lover who is a victim of his own sensitivity. He's unable to get distance from his feelings, right? And then if you have not enough of that lover energy, then we become the impotent lover who lacks zest, who lacks enthusiasm for life, and everything seems stale, and he is depressed because he's lacking the meaning in his life. All right, so we have to again bring it into harmony, bring it into the golden mean, so that we can feel the emotions and not actually be run by them, right? We feel a certain way, we get awareness on how we feel, and we use our knowledge of how we feel to the best of our abilities, rather than get too attached to how we feel or use how we feel according to some external circumstance and let that dictate our behaviors, okay? Because we have to access it in its perfect golden mean harmony, without too much, without too little, but just enough, right? The Goldilocks rule. That's too hot, that's too cold, this one is just right. Okay? And when we have these three archetypes, when we are thinking, doing, and feeling in alignment, then we are integrating and becoming the king of our lives, right? The king integrates the archetypes in perfect balance. And when we look at this ancient mythology, the king was actually a vessel for the divine, right? We look at Hammurabi, who got his Hammurabi's commandments from the king. Moses got the 10 commandments from the God, right? He was the connection between, he was the vessel for the divine. And even in the Chinese cultures, it was like they rule from the mandate of heaven, right? So it's all about the king being a vessel for something bigger than himself, and his primary purpose was to bring order from the chaos, okay? And I quote from the book, he said that, Robert Moore said that, first, a mortal king operating under the mature masculine energy of the king lived the order in his own life. Only secondly did he enforce it, right? That's important. You have to make sure that you can lead yourself before you lead others. You have to make sure that your life is functioning on all cylinders before you go and help others. This is something that I dealt with myself, right? Understanding that, can I actually help someone build discipline? Can I help them become more masculine if I myself am struggling with those things? The answer is no. Okay, that just becomes a scam at the end of the day. So making sure that I am actually practicing what I preach, I'm living what I teach, and that is a day-to-day thing. And it's always getting awareness on whether your thoughts, your words, your emotions, your behaviors are in harmony, so that you can become the king of your life. Now, again, there are bipolar shadows of this archetype as well. You go too much and you become the tyrant, right? You go too little, you become the weakling. And we can all see examples of this in popular culture. We can all see examples of this in movies that we see online or wherever you watch movies. And the fact is that we have to maintain an awareness of how we are showing up in our lives, so that we can optimize our effectiveness and truly become the king of our lives, who is thinking, doing, feeling, and being the person that you are capable of being. Okay? So I hope that this has been valuable for you. Leave a comment below letting me know your number one takeaway from this video. And with all that being said, this has been Mo. I'll see you in the next video.